how do you know what your clutter threshold is? Like what is the test?
I hate to tell you this,
Uh-oh.
but there is literally no way to know other than to declutter. There's not a quiz that you can take. You can just know if my house feels overwhelming, I'm over my clutter threshold. If my house is consistently getting out of control and I feel bewildered by that, then I'm over my clutter threshold. So declutter, the only way to find your clutter threshold is to declutter. And
Oh
then
my God.
the maintenance for that is a 5-minute pickup. Okay. So this also, it does give you a gauge for, am I at my clutter threshold? It doesn't mean that everything is always going to be in its place. That is just not how I roll. I do not realize when something's leaving my hand. There's
Me either.
no awareness. Things just
Yeah.
randomly end up on surfaces. Okay.
Yes.
I could beat myself up, right? Like I could be like, oh, why am I this way? And it's not that I never still think those things, right? But that didn't help, right? Me saying, why do I do this? I've got to change. I've got to be a different person. That never helped. But what does help is for me to say, okay, I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to set a timer. I'm going to pick stuff up and put it away. If 5 minutes gets my space or my home, my goal is my whole home to be under control again from picking stuff up and putting it away about once a day ish, then I'm under my clutter threshold. Okay. So it's not that it stays perfect, it's that it stays manageable.
Okay. So can we get super tactical?
Sure.
Because the second you started to talk about clutter threshold, and I started imagining my version of organization, which for my entire life has been make it look pretty. Take all the shit that I have everywhere and arrange it to look nice. It's more like staging. I'm like staging shit, right? Everywhere. I immediately thought of my kitchen counters, which drive me fucking crazy because stuff accumulates there. And then I thought about the base of the stairs, both the stairs upstairs where everyone dumps things that need to get taken upstairs. And I thought about the stairs down to the garage, which is where we put cardboard boxes. Like I just have stacks of shit everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it drives me crazy. And so I bet as you're listening to Dana talk and you're nodding your head going, oh my God, this is me. And you can think about those places where that's a place where my clutter threshold is already through the roof. Walking into the mudroom, everything's everywhere. Kitchen counters, everything's everywhere. Base of the stairs, pile of stuff that somebody believes that there's like some magical fairy that lives in our house that picks it up and flies it up to the second floor and puts it in place. Where do you start? Like, take us to one spot, and can you walk us through the process of what decluttering actually means in that spot?
Yeah.
And how you do it.
Before we do that, let me just say, the less stuff you have, the less stuff that can pile, right? Like that was, anyway, I'll move on. So here, where I would start, I recommend what I call the visibility rule. I recommend that you go to the place that visitors to your home will see when they either come inside or are standing at the door and you're trying to keep them from coming inside, right? Because it's a mess, whatever. That is the place to start. And we're going to go through the decluttering process there. I'll explain that. But the reason why you want to start in a visible space is that you will see the progress that you're making. You will see your house getting better. The people who live with you will start to see your house getting better. You'll experience that it is easier to live in a space with less stuff. Okay.
Okay.
And so when you start there, because here's the thing, so many times when we get that desire to declutter, we go to the pantry, we go to the linen closet, we go to the top shelf of the master bedroom closet.
Yes.
We do those spaces because we think, okay, if I will work really hard on this, we really don't use this space that much. And so maybe it'll actually stay that way, right? When in reality, you can work really hard on that. You talked about all the color coding and blah, blah, blah in this random closet. And then at the end of the day, your husband, is like, so what'd you do today? And you're like, oh, I have been organizing all day. And I don't know about you. I'm not going to project this on you, but in my experience, I've had that exact scenario happen. And my husband would be like, really? Like, okay. Well, what is more defeating than that, right? Like, is
Yes.
to feel like I have been organizing all day and I'm still embarrassed to open my front door. But
Yes.
if you work on visible spaces first, then you see the progress that you're making and you inspire yourself to keep going because you're like, oh, wow, that looks good. I may not have noticed when it was messy, but I notice now when it looks great. And then that inspires me to keep going. Okay. Do you want me to talk about the actual process?
Yes.
Okay. I know. See, I have to have like real steps because I have to remind myself still. I still look at a space and go, and I'm like, nope, I have steps. Okay. All right. So the first step is trash. Grab a black trash bag or whatever you have available. Ideally, it's black just because then you can't see what you just put inside of it. Your family
Oh
can't
my
see what you're
God.
putting inside of it.
Can I
Right.
just confess something?
Yes.
I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this. So, Oakley, who is super creative, he's our 18-year-old son. His room is a profound disaster. I didn't get in an argument with him because I don't live in this room, so I don't really care. And I don't clean his room. Like, that's like, you want to live like a sty? That's fine. I don't care. That's your space. But Chris was like, what the hell, dude? Like, we built all these drawers for you to throw, and they're even big drawers, so you don't have to fold things. Everything's on the floor. So Oakley cleaned his room Sunday, okay? And he put all kinds of clothes in a bag that no longer fit him so we could donate them. This morning, they were sitting in the mudroom, which has profoundly passed my clutter threshold, in a clear, whitish colored kitchen garbage bag. In the middle, I spotted a flannel shirt that I paid a lot of money for Christmas that he has outgrown. And I tore open the bag because I could see it, and I pulled it out of the bag just this morning.
It happens, right?
Yes, you know what I'm going to do with that? I'm going to hang it in my closet because I can wear it, but I don't even want it. What the fuck
That's
is wrong
hilarious.
with me, Dana?
Nothing's wrong with you. This is normal.
So is
Okay.
that why you have a black bag so you can't see the stuff that you're
Yes.
throwing out?
Yes, that's exactly why. Now, with that, if you're like, I don't have black trash bags, start with whatever. Start with a paper sack. It doesn't matter. Okay.
Okay.
But if you have a black trash bag, use that for exactly the reason that you're talking about. But I'm talking about trash, not necessarily donations at this point.
Okay.
Like when I start with trash, the reason I start with trash is it is literally the easiest of the easy stuff. I am not talking about deciding whether this item is trash. I'm talking about just saying, that's trash, put it in the bag. That's trash, put it in the bag. It starts the movement. Right?
Okay.
Like there are literally no decisions to be made, no emotions to be felt. It is just the action. And that immediately makes the space less overwhelming because there's less stuff in it than there was before.
Okay.
But it also helps my brain start to adjust to what's actually there. Because when I look at it as a big pile, it's like, it's a pile. The pile is overwhelming. There's important stuff in there, I'm sure. And so it feels like the whole pile is full of important decisions, difficult decisions to make. But as I'm looking for trash, I'm seeing what's actually there, which then helps me be ready to move into the next steps of the process. Okay.
Okay. So we start with trash and a black bag.
Yes.
And anything that is trash. Now, I know this is a technical question, but I am mentally in a mudroom.
Okay.
If you see a mitten and that doesn't have a pair, is that considered trash as part of this process? Or are we just talking papers and crap people have not thrown out and that kind of thing?
If you have to think about it,
Yes.
skip it and we'll get to it in the next step.
I love you.
Okay.
And I love that you're breaking it down because I think this is like a real thing that we struggle with. Like I see a pile and you're right. I can become paralyzed because I think there might be something expensive or important in there. And so I don't know if I'm ready to sort through all that stuff. I just don't want to see the pile because I want it to be pretty. But you're saying trash, black bag, go. What's the next step?
And the mindset there too that you're saying is I just want it to be pretty. change your mindset to, I'm going to make this space better. That means I can literally throw away 2 pieces of trash, 1 piece of trash, get distracted, step away because I'm just don't want to do this right now. And I've still made it better, which means I have been successful. Like if I do anything, I have achieved better. Okay. So, all right. Sorry. That was a little preachy break there.
No, I think it's perfect, because your point about us attacking this like a project that then spills out of control is part of the problem.
Yes.
And really leaning into this concept of decluttering as an ongoing way of life and removing things that you have to manage is genius. Because I don't feel successful in this area.
But you are successful with every piece of trash. It is better because my goal is better. My goal is to have less in the space. If you have less in the space than you did when you started, you have successfully decluttered. You're not done, but you have successfully decluttered. It's just stuff leaving your house, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's move to step 2. Step 2 is the easy stuff. So trash was the easiest of the easy stuff because it's just going straight into the trash bag or the recycling bin. If you have one available and accessible and established, bring it with you along with that trash bag. Okay.
Okay.
But the second step is the easy stuff. Easy stuff I define as anything that already has an established home. It's just not there for whatever reason. Like I'm not going to agonize over, why is this in the mudroom? It's just, oh, this goes into its already established home in the kitchen or whatever. I'm going to take those things to their already established homes immediately. I can take as many as my hands will hold, but I can't take any more than that. Like I'm not going to put them in a box. I'm not going to set them aside and do it later. I'm going to go everything that comes into my hand that I pick up that I identified as easy, having an established home, no decision to make, no emotions to be felt. I am just going to go ahead and I'm going to take it there now. Okay. So again, I am making this space better. I can step away at any time because I'm making progress and only progress. Right.
Got it.
Then the third step is donations. Okay. This can happen at any point in the process. It just gives me an excuse to stick stuff in my donate box immediately without asking any decluttering questions, because there are things that obviously need to be put in there. But when you are someone who feels, who hasn't felt successful at decluttering before, it feels like all decluttering decisions are going to be difficult. So we want to narrow down the ones that you really have to make decisions about and go ahead and just stick stuff in the donate box. The key with the donate box, like the black trash bag, is that the box itself needs to be donatable. So don't stencil the word donate on the outside of a cute wooden box. Like that's not what we're doing, right?
Because that's organization.
Well, yeah.
Right.
And 2, it just sets myself up to have to go back through that box again, right? Like, and then I'm going to second guess myself. And if I know that I'm going to go through it again, then I might put things in there that I haven't actually made a real decision about, right? Because I'm like, future me is going to have it all together. You know, that's what I always thought. Someday I'm going to be organized. How could I not be, right? So I'm going to put this in this box because I'll know what to do with it later. And instead, I'm just putting off decisions. And then I know that that box actually has decisions to be made. So then I put off dealing with that. And that's, you know, that's what people I'm not on TikTok, but I hear from a lot of people who call them doom boxes. And they're like, oh, doom boxes, your process works for doom boxes. And I'm like, I think it's didn't organize, only moved is what it stands for. But just the word doom, I was like, oh, I know what that is. Yeah. I had a lot of those over the years. Right?
Well, I'm glad that you got very granular, because the second you said a donate box, I immediately imagined a plastic or a cardboard box. And I immediately imagined me taking a Sharpie and writing the word donate on a piece of paper and taping it to the side. And then I would fill it up and then like have more questions about what's in that box. So you're basically just saying, no, have a box that's already going to get donated to. Some bin that you can also drop off, or basket.
Or Amazon boxes, whatever.
Amazon boxes. Mm-hmm. Do not write the word donate. Just know that this is going.
Do write the word donate so that you remember that was a donate box.
Okay. So write the word donate.
Right. But don't decorate it. Don't make it something you're going to want to reuse.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, when you do this, do you recommend that you just take that box in this session and just put it in the back of your car because you're done with this decluttering moment? Or do we leave it somewhere?
It's really up to you. It depends on how full it is. The decision making is over once the thing is in the box. The action of taking it somewhere to be donated or making the phone call to have a pickup scheduled or whatever, that is a valid use of your decluttering time. But I don't want you to not declutter because you're not going to be able to go drop it off today. Okay.
Got
So
it.
like,
Okay.
I will often have some donate. My husband would hear this and go, you always have, I always have a donate box or 2 or 3 in a spot in our garage that is ready to be taken wherever it needs to go. The decision making though is where the real power is. And those things are just ready to know that, oh, we're going to such and such place. There's a donation drop off near there. Let's load them up and take them.
Great. Got it. What comes after donate?
Okay. So at this point, we have removed trash, easy stuff, and obvious donations, right? So we are down to things that at first glance, you're like, either yes, they go here, or I have no idea on this item what to do. Okay. So this is where my 2 decluttering questions come in. And I had seen, when I started this, I had seen lists, beautifully written lists of all kinds of questions to ask yourself about items and whether you want to donate it or keep it. I had too much stuff in my house to ask myself 10 questions about everything, and besides, those questions generally let my brain spin out, right? Like, do I love it? Well, yeah, I love all this stuff, like, why would I have it in my house if I didn't love it? Right. So I couldn't ask myself those kinds of questions. So I came up with 2 questions. And if I can answer the first one, I don't even have to ask the second one. So the first question is, if I needed this item, where would I look for it first? Okay. It's really important that you ask exactly that question. Where would I look for it first? Does not allow for analysis. It is an instinct question. Okay. The word would is the key word. That means, because this item was not easy, it doesn't have an established home in my house. Okay. But I pick it up and I say, okay, I've got these I'm going to have a prop here. I decided not to wear these, anyway, but if I needed my headphones, where would I look for them first? It is literally the first drawer or cabinet that I would open, even if I had no confidence they would be there. It is because it needs a home, right? Like a place for everything and everything in its place that organized people say and think is so obvious. I was always like, what are y'all talking about? Like, I don't have places for things. Like, what? Like, it just didn't make any sense in my brain. And so I had to come up with a place for things. And this is how I do that. Where would I look for it first? Because here's the thing. The beauty of putting something in the place where you would look for it first is that when you look for it, you find it in the first place where you would look for it. And you find it in the first place where you look for it. Isn't that the goal that you've had all along, wanting to be organized?
It's so true. And well, no, what I'm realizing my goal is that I just want shit to look pretty. I've never even thought about like organization as a way to make my life easier. And it's a genius question because I've put things in cabinets and drawers because I didn't know where else to put it.
Yes. This is how you establish the home. You do not, what I used to do was think about where my grandma kept hers.
Yeah.
And think, okay, well, her house was always great. So I should put mine in the place, or call my best friend who's way more organized than me and say, hey, where do you keep your whatever it is?
Yeah.
But how many people say as a joke, or there's a Facebook meme or something that says, I got organized and now I can't find anything.
Yes.
Right? Like, this doesn't allow for that to happen. I am putting it in the place, and it's hard in the beginning because you don't trust yourself, right? You're like, but what is the first place that pops in your mind where you would frantically look if you needed this item and had no idea where it was. Where's the first place where you would look? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this also is part of that accepting how I actually function as opposed to how organized people function. And I wish I was like them.
Yeah.
And instead saying, okay, fingernail clippers were the thing when I came up with this question, as I was like, everybody else in the whole wide world surely would put their fingernail clippers in the bathroom drawer because that's where they're supposed to go, right? But in my family, whenever somebody is looking for fingernail clippers, they look in this junk drawer that's like on the edge of the kitchen. That is just our reality. And I said, you know what? I would rather have things be in the first place where we look than try to be like other people and never be able to find anything in my house.
That's amazing.
So
That's amazing. See, I don't know where to put nail clippers, so I just look in Chris's top drawer of the bathroom.
Well, if that's where you look for it first, then that's great. Like, that's great. If that's where you look first, that's where they should be.
Got it.
It really doesn't, there is not a perfect place for things. There's the place where you would look first in your house. That's what matters. But then there's the second part of the question, which is not actually a question, but is actually the key to my no mess progress and only progress decluttering process. Okay.
Okay.
And that is when you answer that question, where would I look for this first? Take it there now. People get all worked up over this. Like they are like, no, but that's can't be the most efficient way. And yet in the end, it is. So here's the deal. I used to, because I'm kind of obsessed with efficiency, which would never show with the way my house used to look, right? But I would make all these piles. I would be like, okay, this is the stuff that goes to the kids' room. This goes to the garage.
Yes.
This goes to the bathroom.
Yes.
And when I'm done,
yes,
I will go deliver all these things through the house. And that makes so much more sense than taking it there right now.
Yes.
But that's how things work in an ideal world where I don't get distracted in the midst of a project. I don't stop halfway through. Nobody starts bleeding, right? Like that's the ideal world. I don't live in an ideal world. Okay. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and take it there right now. No piles, because before I would step away for an hour or 3 weeks or whatever. And those neat little piles where I had totally made all these decisions, those neat little piles now morph into one big pile outside the space that I was initially decluttering. So my house looks worse than it did before.
Yes.
That's the whole make a bigger mess whenever you try to declutter.
Oh my gosh.
And so I said, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take it there right now. And then when I do that, I can stop. I'm accepting the fact that I will get distracted or life will happen. I can stop at some point and this space is only better. It is never worse. I have never created a bigger mess. I'm taking one item at a time, making a final decision on it, and I'm acting on that final decision. So it's either gone in the trash bag, it's gone to its already established home, it has gone in the donate box, or I have established a home by asking myself, where would I look for this first? And then I take it there now. Okay. So that's the key to all of this. And people will resist it.
Wow.
And then I'll say, just try it. And then they will try it. And then they will email me and say, I cannot believe the difference. I cannot believe I have actually made real progress decluttering for the first time in my life. It's working. Like it's changing my house because of that. Go ahead and take it there right now. But people don't like it, but it's still... it works.
I think it's genius because, I completely related to moving and sorting and organizing things into piles and then running out of energy or time or getting distracted and not actually taking those piles anywhere.
Well,
and then you're right. And it makes it worse.
Yes. You come back to the space and you have to make all those decisions again. Right?
Oh my God. I feel like I do this every weekend. That every weekend it is me on that hamster wheel of making piles and running things around and pulling apart stuff. And holy smokes, this is revolutionary. Yeah. What do you do about finding things that, like, how do you determine if you're keeping it? Because I feel like I get very paralyzed when I have an item and I've spent a lot of money for it, or somebody's given it to me, or I might need it some point 10 years from now. At what point do you actually take it to the junkyard? Like, what's the difference between I'm throwing this out versus I'm donating?
So all of those questions that you have in your mind, or that you just stated,
Yeah.
those are the natural questions that people think they need to ask when they're decluttering. I don't ask those questions. I stick to the facts. Okay. And so my process leads me through and helps me make those decisions, but without all of the emotions, because I brought all this stuff into my house because I saw the value in it. Right. And so before, when I would declutter, I would make value decision after value decision, which is exhausting. Right.
Yes.
And then it's so emotionally exhausting. And I know it is, that then I would put off decluttering because I was like, I don't have it in me to make those kind of decisions today. Right. Like, so instead I say, okay, if I needed this item, where would I look for it first? And then I take it there now. And then I look at that space. And sometimes this is a common question people have, is like, what do I do when that space is its own big decluttered mess? All I'm going to do is I'm going to not leave that space any worse. And I'm going to say, what am I willing to get rid of from this messy space where I would look for this item first? What am I willing to get rid of from here that will create the space that I need for this item that I answered I would look for it first here? Okay. So it might be trash. Ideally, it's going to be trash or dead donations, because then my trash bag and my donate box are back at the space I was initially decluttering, and that'll take me back there. Right.
Right.
But so I'm just going to say, what in here trash? Because it needs to be decluttered, right? Like I just said, it's a total mess. There's no room for this. So it's going to be decluttered, but I'm not doing that right now. I'm sticking with this initial space. And so I'm like, what in here am I willing to get rid of in order to make room for this? And so it helps me, instead of saying, does this thing have value? I say, is there a space for it? Which is a very, what's the word? It's leaving my brain right now, but it's a very,
I don't know. I'm hanging
fact-based.
on every single word. Well, what do you do if you have like a basement or garage? There's like space in there. Can I just give you an example?
Sure.
I'm starting to realize how nuts I am about this stuff.
You are not nuts.
No, but I literally am realizing and I don't know if you listening to us are feeling the same sort of energy drain, but I'm realizing how much noise and just how much drama I add to the process of what I thought was organizing. And so I'll give you an example. So I've talked about how our son Oakley, who is very creative, who will love this process, who spent half of his Sunday organizing his room to make his dad happy. And then he did the big thing of clothes. I've admitted that I ripped through it and pulled two things out. I don't know where I'm going to put that stuff, because I guess it would go in I don't even know why I kept it. I kept it because it was something that I bought him for Christmas that was rather expensive. And then there's a jacket that's like a fall jacket that, because I bought it for him when he was 15, he literally wore it for about a minute before he grew out of it. And it was expensive. And so I see this jacket, I grab it. I'm like, okay, we live in Vermont. People visit. Should I hold on to this in case somebody visits and they didn't pack a jacket? Maybe this would fit me and it would fit this. And then I literally attach all this meaning, and I create these stories about why I need to keep the thing and the value of the thing. And if I ask myself, if I needed this item, where would I look for it? I'm even stalled because I go, well, I don't really need it in the mudroom. Maybe I should create a place in the basement for extra clothes for guests who forgot clothes that you need when you visit Vermont. What the fuck is going on? Like, I donate, duh.
Well, okay.
Is this
what
normal?
you just described? Yes. What you just described is your brain spinning out. Okay.
Yes.
And a lot of people who are naturally organized and who see this and go, I mean, I'll just be honest. How many times in your life, how many times in my life have I had somebody go, why are you thinking that way? That is exactly how my brain worked which is the reason I just had somebody recently say to me, I can follow your process because I know you know all of my reasons why I want to keep this, like, and still have a process that works. Like when I'm talking to someone who's like, those are dumb reasons, like everything you said made sense to me. I get it. Right. And yet when I thought that way, my house was a disaster and I was frustrated with it. And I had all
Yeah.
those feelings of what is wrong with me. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, I hate to just be like, let's go back to the process, except that
No, let's
the
go back to the
process
process.
is what talks you through all of this.
Okay.
So the second decluttering question that I only ask myself, if my first response to where would I look for this first, whether it's about the jacket, whether it's about a stapler, whatever, if I look at the item and I'm like, where would I look for this first? And my answer is, like, okay. Then I ask myself the question, if I needed this item, would it ever occur to me that I already had one? Okay. I can think about this being in your scenario that you were talking about with but we're not going to bring the scenario into it. We're just going to ask the fact-based question. If I needed this jacket, would it occur to me that we already had one? And it's tough because you're holding it in your hand, right? Like it's there, it's in front of you. And then how many of us are like, well, I just decluttered something and then I ended up needing it. But I had to make progress in my home. I had to get stuff out of my house, right? So I had to make these hard calls and say, I'm going to be honest. If I needed this, would it occur to me that I already had one? Because I didn't have a place where I would look for it first, which means I would not have even gone looking for it. Instead, I would have done without, we would have said, hey, here's 6 sweatshirts, kid who forgot your coat, right? Or, hey, let's run by the store and grab one, or whatever.
Yep.
But those are both valid options. But the thing is, if I didn't get rid of this item, and I wouldn't have looked for it if I needed it, it's just sitting in my house and I'm adding more to it as I go and grab what I need because it doesn't occur to me that I already have one.
Yeah.
Okay. So that right there is me saying, this is my reality check. I'm going to stick it in the donate box. If I insist that I would know that I had it, then I have to go back to that first question and say, where would I actually look for this first? Not that I think it's going to be there, but literally, if I know for sure that I have this, then there has to be a first place where I would look, right? And I need to be honest with myself about that too.
Wow. This is fascinating because it is a whole new way to think about this. Because again, just to come back to this example, it wasn't even like I saw it in the mudroom. I came out of my bedroom. And I don't know if anybody else's family members do this, but somehow our staircase upstairs is the garbage and laundry chute where people just chuck things over the banister and they land up like at the bottom of the stairs. And so there was the donate like trash bag with the flannel shirts that I ripped out. And then laying a couple stairs above was this jacket that no longer fits him. And you can do this process is what I'm realizing in that moment, because I think that's also the reality. The reality of the decluttering process, if I'm tracking, is not that you go, okay, this Sunday, I'm doing this in the mudroom. It's that you walk out of your bedroom, and you're like, what the fuck? Okay, he's like throwing all this stuff down. It's 7:15 in the morning. There's now a giant mess in front of me at the base of the stairs. And you're saying you can do this process right now. I see the jacket. It doesn't belong there. I have a choice in that moment to say, if I needed this item, where would I look for this first? And if it's not immediate, and if the answer is the mudroom, I walk to the mudroom and hang it up.
Yeah.
If the answer is, ooh, it doesn't fit him anymore, and do we even need to keep it? And I go to the second question, which is, what was the second question?
If I needed this item, would it ever occur to me that I already had one?
If I needed this item, would it occur to me that I already had one? And the answer is yes, because I have the exact same size in a jacket for me. I buy the same company. So yes, I have one.
Would it occur to you that you had this second one? that you had your son's jacket? Because if it would, then it's fine
Yeah.
to go take it with the place where you would look for it first, because we're also going to address the reality of that space as we get into the last step of the process. But
got it. So let's just say, let's indulge my psychoness, okay? Because I think we all have that. If you're a creative mind, you're also thinking, someday, 15 years from now, there might be a scenario where I wish I had this, right?
Yes.
So let's just say I go, okay, where am I going to look for this first? And I make a snap decision. This goes in my guest closet, right? And I have a little rack in the basement.
No. You didn't make a decision. You asked yourself a question that revealed your instinct of where you would look for it first. Sorry, I just had to.
No. Great. If I needed this item, where would I look for it first? And my instinct would be, it would be in the basement, in a little area I've created for extra stuff in case somebody needs to borrow something.
Okay.
Which I don't know why I need this, but I had it. So I would then go downstairs to the basement to this place that has not been created yet, and I would put the jacket there.
Yeah. If that's the place where you would look for it first, then you put it there. But if there is no thing there, like there's no place for it, but there's a pile of other stuff, okay, I'm not going to leave that any worse. So what am I willing to get rid of in order to make room for this jacket? Which means something is leaving your house, right? So you are decluttering, but often it will help you realize, oh, wait, there's not actually a good place for this here. Or wait, I'm not willing to get rid of any of this stuff in order for this jacket to stay. And it will help you realize, oh, I can just donate this item.
This thing. Yeah, that's what I'm getting through all of this. Like I'm realizing this process helps you deal with yourself.
Yes. But if you don't take it there now, you're living in this land of hypotheses.
I'm still thinking about the damn jacket.
Yeah.
Right now.
You're like, oh, I'm going to put it down there. Yeah. I'll make a space down there.
Yes.
But you're not dealing with the reality of that actual space. You're not dealing with the reality of, oh, wow, I cannot stand going in this basement and I don't know. I live in Texas. We don't have basements. I'm very jealous of people with basements, but I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, if I take it down to this spot and then I realize this spot is full of spiders and all this stuff, and I don't want to leave a jacket down here. You know what I mean? Like, but when I go there, it forces me into that reality. So much of what I do, probably 100%, honestly, of what I do is just a process that helps me accept reality about myself, reality about my stuff, reality about my space, all that.
I love this. What is the final step in this process?
Okay. So let's say, and this is going to apply to any space, all those spaces where you're taking things, but we're talking about the space that you are working on. Okay.
Okay. The
so
mudroom.
At this point, you have removed trash, easy stuff, which belongs somewhere else. You've removed donations, and you are down because you've gone through the 2 decluttering questions. You are down to things that you would look for in this space, right?
Okay.
Like that's the only stuff that's in here is stuff that you would look for. But if the drawer still won't close, that's not working, right? Okay. Like if it's still spilling outside of itself, then that's not going to work. So this last step is implementing what I call the container concept, which is something that when I had this realization about containers, it was something that if I was not writing about it as I was doing it, I would have probably been embarrassed to share it with a random person. But because I was just like, I'm just writing about what I'm figuring out, I wasn't trying to teach anybody anything at that point. And everybody went, oh, what? Like this changes everything. I was like, oh, okay. So it's not just me that this is valuable for. So here's the container concept. I used to think that containers were for putting things in, right? Organized people love containers. They buy containers. Their house looks great. I must need more containers. And so I would bring containers into my house. So here's my little scenario that I give. Let's say my friend whose kids were the same age as mine, her little craft area looked amazing. Mine was this huge pile disaster spilling out of the cabinet. Okay. And I would look and say, oh, she has her crayons in a red bucket.
Yes.
That's the difference between her and me. right?
Yes.
Like she has a red bucket. I don't have a red bucket. That's why my space is a disaster. So I would go and buy a red bucket and I would dump crayons in there and I would realize, oh, I still got 700 crayons left over. Why does this not work for me the way it works for her? So I would go out and buy 2 more red buckets and then I would put the rest of my crayons in those red buckets. I'd go to put the red buckets on the shelf and my shelf wouldn't fit 3 red buckets. And I would think, are you kidding me? Why is this so hard for me? Like, why does this not work for me? And then eventually I would be like, well, obviously I need more shelves. So I'd buy more shelves. And then at some point I would think, well, I don't have any room for more shelves. Obviously I need a new house and we can't afford a new house right now. So I am doomed to be disorganized. That is just how my brain worked. I just thought that if I, ran out of space in a container, I bought another container. And in reality, her house was smaller than mine. But in my mind, my issue was that my house was too small, right?
Okay.
Like, which doesn't make sense, but it made total sense to my brain before.
Yep.
Right. So when I was working, I was talking to myself because that's what I do with how I've been able to build what I've built, but I was talking and I was saying container and I went, container, contain, like the word contain is in there. Serve as a limit, set a boundary, like firefighters contain a fire, they create a boundary. And as long as the fire stays inside the boundary, they can keep it under control. But if it goes outside the boundary, bad things happen, right? So like their whole goal is to keep it within this boundary. And I realized, oh, a container is not for putting things in. A container is meant to serve as a limit, to serve as a boundary. And that changed everything for me because I was able to say, okay, here's the red bucket. It's not going to fit everything, but it's the boundary. So I'm going to put my favorite crayons in first. And when it's full, something happens in my brain and I realize, oh, maybe I don't need 1,000 crayons. Oh, okay. And I haven't had to make value decisions. Remember, we were talking about this thing, but what about when I might use it? And what about, and it was expensive and blah, blah, blah. Before I would pick up every single crayon. I mean, this is all hypothetical, right? But not really. But I would pick up every crayon and be like, well, I mean, I know it's broken, but broken crayons still color, right?
Oh, yes, that's right.
Right. I mean, there's Facebook memes about that, right?
Oh, my God.
So I would make all these, and it took forever for me to analyze every single one. And instead, it's just, I'm going to put my favorite ones in first, and I'm going to let the container make the hard decision for me.
Wow.
And then when I go to put the red bucket on the shelf, I have to acknowledge that the shelf is also a container. The shelf is a limit, and it determines how many red buckets I can have. And the size of the room determines how many shelves I can have. And the size of my house is the size of my house. Remember, it's that reality acceptance, right? So I'm like, the size of my house is the size of my house. And if I'm going to put my favorite things in first, and I'm going to realize my house is a container, my house is a limit, what's my favorite thing in my house? It's the people who live in it, right? So like we deserve space first, which means I can't just keep putting in more shelves that make it hard for me to move around and make it hard for me to get to where I need to get. And so that just shifted everything. And I said, does it have space in the container? It actually doesn't matter how valuable something is, how much sentimental, feelings I have toward it. It's, does it have space? I can keep anything, but I can't keep everything and my house ever have a chance of being under control. Okay.
Wow.
So that's the container concept, which changes how you look at your house and how you look at your stuff and lets me let go of things because I'm like, it's not me. I see the value. It's the container.
Wow.
I don't have the space for it. And that is very freeing.
I got to start with a confessional because I booked the expert that you're about to meet today because I need to talk to her. I struggle with this profoundly. I am talking about organization in your home. You may be the person that is super slobby, or you might be the one that is like almost OCD. This is a conversation for all of us My guest today says you and we got this topic of organizing completely wrong.